Hello, everyone. Happy Friday. I am a little bit late today. I was walking through the rain and I knew I wasn't going to make it back. So I just decided that I was not going to let that stress me out. And I'm sure that if you're on, you're on. And if you're not, you can watch it later. So if you are watching this live, say hello. If you are watching on a replay, just put a hashtag replay so that I know you've watched it, and just any feedback or comments along the way. So today I haven't actually considered what I'm going to speak about. So what I'm thinking of talking about is me. Why do I do the work that I do? What drew me to becoming an anxiety and depression specialist, helping people with depression, anxiety, PTSD, complex PTSD, addictions and eating disorders. And most people who do go into this line of work, and I have seen it with psychology students, is like you can almost guarantee if someone's studying psychology that either that they've had to deal with mental health in their family at some level. And the same is true for me. So while my life now at age 48 point whatever it is, I'll be 49 in August. While my life now is really, really good, and it has been really, really good for a long time, it wasn't always really easy and it wasn't always really good. So there have been times in my life where looking back now, I just wonder how I ever survived. There were times where it was really dark. There were times where it was really, really hopeless, where I felt really unlovable. My sense of who I was completely lost, completely distorted. I had a sense that I just didn't belong, like I'm on the wrong planet. And in relationships, I felt like I was always the less worthy one, so unworthy of love or unlovable, all those kind of things that would make being alive really difficult. So to my credit, to my luck, like it's not to my credit because I didn't put this in me, it just naturally was there. I had a really strong sense of one thing, and that was my capability. So I felt that I was capable, and that resource was the one thing that kept me keeping on going. So if you've read, there's actually a study that they did. I'm always referring to studies because I love data, but there's a study that they did on rats or mice. I'm not sure which one, and it's a really awful study, but they put them into water and timed how long they could swim. It was actually a stress test and a resilience test, and they then timed them, and they might have been able to swim for a minute, 3 minutes or something, not very long at all. Now, what they did is they took the mouse out, dried it off, gave it a rest, and then put it back in. And those mice then were able to swim not just like twice as long or 3 times as long or 10 times as long, but they were able to swim for hours. And the reason they were able to swim for hours is because when someone has hope, they can hold on and keep going for that much longer. And it's when we don't have hope that life feels hopeless. And I reached that point where life felt hopeless. But the one thing that kept me going was I felt like I had some capacity in me that was capable, like you can get out of this, or you can change this, or you can do this. And that belief that I had in me that I could change my life is the same belief that still keeps me going now when I'm working with clients. So if I have somebody that's in front of me that feels like they've lost their hope, I can see in them the hope. It's not just a hope, I have an absolute firm belief that not only can I change my life, but that you can too, that person can too, that we all can wake up on any day and do something different, be something different, have something different, feel something different. So going back to my past, I felt completely worthless, completely unlovable. But I had some hope. My thing was that I wasn't a people pleaser in the sense that I was keeping my mouth closed and being agreeable. So I was probably more on the other side. I actually had a belief as a child that I was annoying because my dad would treat me as if I was annoying. So I just felt like I'm an annoyance. So I didn't have the people pleasing thing, but I did have that in order to be loved, I need to contribute value. Like I need to earn my keep. I've got to earn it. And so when I went into a relationship, I would pull the wagon. And there's a relationship coach called Rory Ray, and she talks about a relationship being like a rowboat. And if you are a woman and you are rowing harder than the man, then there's something wrong, because men have a natural predisposition for being the person that needs to work for something. And so as a female, as a woman, it's good to be able to lean back in a relationship, be able to lean back into that feminine energy, not to be just carried along, but to be able to not feel that they need to row it, steer it, and sort of take away the job of the male energy in the relationship. I mean, it doesn't matter what gender you are or are not. There is a feminine energy and a masculine energy. And so what happens when we have had to shield ourselves, protect ourselves, save ourselves, is that sometimes we can get into a lot of masculine energy because we've had to do it for ourselves, and it's very hard for us to put that aside. And that probably was me. So what that meant is that I really struggled in terms of being able to access that nurturing feminine side of me. And I was constantly working, striving, trying to earn my side of the relationships that I was in, or relationship. And that meant that I felt like I was a bad mum. I was never able to make even though I loved my kids more than anything in the world, I'm sure that it would have appeared that they came second. Like everything else would have looked like it came first. I had to be a hard worker, and I had to be this and that. So feeling unlovable, feeling worthless, feeling ashamed, basically shameful of myself, and like a bad mum and guilty and all that sort of stuff, and being unable to sort of feel good about myself meant that I was unable to then stand up for myself, stand up for my children. It's like a vicious cycle of guilt and hard work and just really, really big darkness. Now, what happens to us in our lives when things are out of balance like that is we're not dealing with emotions. Now, so you can do two things with emotions. You can internalize them or externalize them. If you see somebody that's just like, really out there with their temper tantrums and whatever, they're expressing them, at least they're getting them out. But other people hold them in. So I switched mine off. Now, I remember I used to say, oh, I haven't cried in 10 years. And I was kind of like quite numb. Not a good place to parent from, not a good place to live from. What it ended up doing to me is that I ended up with collapsed lungs, a tumor the size of a softball on my left lung. I had chemotherapy, radiation for a year, and went through the whole cancer experience. Now, while I was in hospital with cancer, I apparently rang my cousin and told him all of life's truths and wisdoms while I was high as a kite on morphine, and said to him, look, don't focus on material possessions, just live your life and be free. And so that was really interesting to get that feedback back later on, as I had no recollection of the conversation. But what else was interesting is that while I was on that morphine, I honestly feel like I went to hell. Now, everyone else has like they get sick or they have a near-death experience. They're like, oh, yeah, I went to the light and I saw God and whatever. I felt like I went to hell. There was a state that I went to, which was like, perhaps I was like semi-lucid or something, but it felt like all the joy, all the love, all the connection, all the hope, all the positivity, every gleam of light in the world had been sucked out, and every possibility, probability, like I can only describe it as hell. And that feeling, like there is a part in Harry Potter where there's some kind of things that come and suck the joy and whatever out of people, and it was like that. And So yeah, it was just a really eye-opening experience to have that terribleness upon me. And it kind of put into perspective all the bad days that I'd had, where you felt like, I can't go on, I can't keep living, I don't want to keep living, this is too hard, why me? Why are my kids doing that? Why is that my partner doing that? Why isn't he doing that? Why aren't they doing that? Like, why can't, anything I do ever work out? That kind of stuff. So coming out of that, I mean, just to summarize it, the next really awful thing, which I'd already been through previously, but for some reason, and I've heard other people have done this before, I separated from my husband, got back together, and had Amelia, so a child number 3. And then we went through a really long, messy divorce when I was 37. It wasn't until then that I really sat down and said, enough is enough. I am sorting myself out, and I am not going to stop working on myself until I can hold myself together and feel good in my skin, in my body, look in the mirror and feel good about who I am, and actually love my life, not just survive it, not just accept it, not, because there's a part of me that knew, like, I had to be strong and I had to be this and I had to be that, but I wanted to be able to actually love my life and live it for me. So what that actually meant, it meant taking the time to do the work, and it was an immense amount of learning. It was like, I didn't even know where to go or who, or I think I started with a counselor or something like that, and I just found that just didn't work for me, because it was like, okay, so tell me all the terrible things that have ever happened in your life. And I was like, okay, well, this, like, I'm just repeating, like, I'm talking about the same stuff of all, like, I can talk to anybody. Not to say that counseling is not good, but for me, I needed answers. I needed systems. I needed to know how to get out of this. Like, I needed a how, really. So what I discovered was that I enrolled in a whole stack of courses, spent tens and tens and tens, probably closer to the hundreds of thousands of dollars over the last 11, 12 years on courses. And what that did was not only did it teach me how to think a different way, but it gave me the opportunity to practice thinking a different way. Because what I find is that some of the information that I learned wasn't new, it was about the implementation of it. And what I also discovered is that you can not do a lot of work on yourself just on your own. There's a requirement for you to work with other people. So when you're doing courses, when you're doing programs, when you're doing sessions, when you're doing all those kind of work where you're with other people, there is something about connecting with another human being that allows us to do the healing in ourselves that isn't possible just with us alone. So I went through learning how to think differently, learning how to speak differently, learning how to imagine a different life. And now, remember, I'd already transformed my life twice before that, in different ways. Like, I'd managed to get from poverty to, and drug lifestyle, poverty kind of stuff, into a really, financially good life. I knew that there was stuff in the mind that you could use. I knew about The Secret. I knew about manifesting. I knew about all that sort of stuff. But this is more about working on the whole of the inside of the identity, the being able to tap into, like, who I am and what I believe about myself. And on the very, very simplest level, is basically life coaching. That's where I started, was life coaching. But it just felt like it wasn't everything. It just was, it was conscious work, like basically conscious work. So what it taught me when I learned to think differently, speak differently, and imagine differently, I'm speaking and thinking and imagining different things about me, but then I'm speaking about me to other people differently. I'm imagining me differently to other people. I'm thinking differently about my relationships with other people. And then I'm thinking and relating differently to other people. And that is like a practice thing that takes quite a lot of time if you're going to do it manually. And it becomes really, really quick when you start working. So instead of working top down, you work bottom up, and you're starting to go from the unconscious. And then things start to really go quickly, because while we can reprogram our belief systems, and we can look at our values, and we can do that kind of work, and set goals, and put visions together for what we really want. I mean, we can all sit down and say, look, I want to have a great relationship, a beautiful home, a nice car, a happy family. Like all people want at the core similar things. They just want a peaceful, happy life filled with love and connection and things that they're passionate about. But what actually was different for me once I started getting into the more deeper kind of work, and there's, every time I do a course, I'd think, surely this person can't teach me something new. And I'd go in and I'll be like, wow, there is just like an unlimited amount of exploration to do on the inside of who we are, and processes. Like each time somebody says, oh, I'm going to teach you all a new process, and I'm like, okay, so this is going to be something I've already learned before. I've learned so many processes. And then it's like, wow, I had never thought that would be so powerful, so effective, so impactful kind of thing. So that's kind of the journey that I took, moving along the way to get myself out of, and I was always, I have to admit, like everybody, I was always moving out of the fry pan. So instead of moving, like, not the last 10 years, I've been moving towards the passion, towards, like, it's like the magnet is pulling me. Whereas previously in my life, it was always moving away from. I was moving away from, I don't want to feel like this. I don't want to live like this. I don't want to have to put up with this. I don't like, and so a lot of my language back when I was, living like that before the age of 37 was like, oh, it is what it is. I've just got to put up with it. I don't have many options, or, that it was just like, that's what's happening to me. My life is happening to me. Like, it wasn't even any point asking myself, how did I get here? Why? What could I do differently? Is because I couldn't even think of anything different to do. Every time I'd think, I want a better relationship, but I can't make him be better. I want my kids to be better, but I can't make them be better. Or I want more money, but I can't, so consciously we can never find the solution. There's no solution that can be found with the conscious mind that compares in any way. And it always feels hard when you do it consciously. Whereas once I got into the unconscious, stuff just starts, like, it's like, on TV where they put the key into the lock and then all this magical stuff happens, and it all just falls away. And it just feels actually like that. And it can be quite scary. And that's where we need to definitely be working holistically, because what happens is people focus on one thing. Like I'm focusing on this big problem I have with one thing, and we're not looking at holistically, and we're trying to fix it with our conscious mind. And then what happens is, even if you solve it, you'll self-sabotage. And I did this so many times in my life. I just would self-sabotage. I would feel myself sabotage. Like, it was like everything would get yucky and horrible, and I'd just start like doing stuff, or I'd get a new car and I'd smash it, or I'd get a whatever it was. If it didn't, because basically what happens is, if you have a certain pattern programmed into you, you're always going to it's going to feel comfortable as long as you match what you're living. And so while I was living in crappiness, I felt like, even though I didn't want that, it matched me. And so it kept coming easily. Crap kept coming easily. It really did. And then when I could shift some of the money stuff, then money kept coming easily, but so did the crap. So it was like crap and money. And, then I would work on something else. But once I got to like where instead of chipping away up here, I could come underneath, and just like everything just falls away when you really get down into the core, the root system, the foundation of your structure of being present in the world. And it's an ongoing journey. It doesn't just finish. Like, you don't just get there and like, yeehaw, now I've got the relationship, the home, the car, the kids, the whatever, which that stuff's all true for me now. And look, I could still be living in that struggle and that heartbreak and that rejection and that failure and that guilt and shame and despair and darkness, and those words just roll off my tongue so easily because I can even imagine them, and I shouldn't do that as I speak them. Yet that could still be where I'm at now, but it's not. And what happens now is that there are still parts of me that come up. It's like as you take a layer off, there's another layer underneath, and it might not be. I mean, instead of dealing with a sledgehammer, like when I started doing the work on myself, it was literally you could sledgehammer parts like that needed to be solved. Like it wouldn't matter what you did, it would just be better than what it was. And so now things are a little bit more delicate, so it's not as obvious. But as I work through stuff, I'm also more tuned into myself. So I can now sense in my body really easily if something's not right or if it's out of alignment. I can feel in my body. I'm really attuned. I'm not numb anymore. I used to have a big gap between my emotions, like something would happen and my emotions would appear like 12 hours later, and then really irrationally, like things like that, because it wasn't safe to feel. So then it wasn't safe to feel now, but it would come and get me later. And then it's really hard to deal with something 12 hours later when you're not in the situation anymore. Like, that feeling like when you have a thing and you can think of 50 things to say 12 hours later, but it doesn't help you in the moment because you've just frozen up. And that's that nervous system response that says, like, I can't fight, I can't flee, I'm just going to just shut down and go numb. And I know from numb, I can deal with it right now, but that's not healthy and it doesn't feel good, and you're in denial. And whatever you can't feel right now is blocked. Like you've got blocks running right through your system. And you can imagine that if you're blocked in your system, in your emotional system, in your nervous system, that is going to cause anxiety. It's going to cause depression. And there were times in my life looking back where I had such bad anxiety, but because I had in my personality, so one of the things I do is archetyping, and one of my archetypes is a knight. Now, the knight is on a quest. The knight loves to rescue. The knight loves to achieve goals. And just by, like, it's lucky for me in my life, it's just been a real godsend that I've had this, because I have continued to be able to plunder forward in my hardships with that knight personality. But it's meant that I've had to, I also have a creative nurturer part of me, and I have had to split that part off, because I can't be continuously on a quest and still look after the creative nurturer part of me. So that creative nurturer part of me, which is incidentally my mothering part, I have had to shut down, split off, and reject. Now, anytime we are splitting off and rejecting anything in ourselves, it's going to cause our identity to be separated, and we're not going to have an alignment of, or even a sense of, who am I? Like, who am I? Am I this night person, or am I this nurturing person who I've shoved and repressed and switched off because it wasn't safe for me to bring her into me, into my presence, into my reality? And and there are 12 archetypes, and it's really easy to work out which ones you are. But my ones are sage, which is teacher and learner; knight, which is the quest one; creative nurturer, which is that person that connects and cares and wants to talk and reach out and all that sort of stuff, and nurture and be creative. And the other one I have is the innocent, it's like a childlike fun one. I can't remember the name for it at the moment, but it's basically the one that wants to get out there and be silly. And so because I have all of those there within me, when they're working together as a whole, and I'm a whole one functioning human being, then I can be really effective. I can be present. I can feel good. Anytime we're splitting parts of ourselves off, sometimes we split off the anger part. It's not safe to be angry. It's not safe to feel angry. It's not safe to express angry. Sometimes we're splitting off, other parts of ourselves. Finding those parts of us that we've had to reject or hide or suppress in order to be able to survive, bringing them in, being able to work from the unconscious, finding solutions within ourselves, always within ourselves. The answer is never, ever outside of ourselves. It's always within ourselves. And basically, and if you're in the Anxiety Free Life group in Facebook, if you're not in, go search for it, Anxiety Free Life by My Local Hypnosis, or go to the My Local Hypnosis Facebook page and look for the groups. You'll see that I've posted in there a Telegraph article, a UK Telegraph, about that. Basically, that scientists used to think that there was a chemical imbalance in the brain, and that's what caused depression. And they've since discovered that that's actually not true. They don't actually understand why SSRI drugs do improve depression. It's nothing to do with serotonin levels in the blood. They've done all the tests to, taking healthy people who are not depressed, reducing their serotonin levels. It's nothing to do with serotonin levels. It is to do with basically when we go through experiences in life that are negative or impactful, traumatic, and trauma does not need to, they talk about big T and little t, and big traumas are the big ones, the ones you read in the news, this happened to this person. And little traumas are the things where, if you can imagine a delicate flower and someone crushes it, and that's your emotions in your heart. And when we have that happen to us when we're little children, and it can be the simplest thing. It can be, somebody shouted at you because you fed just dinner to the dog, or, whatever. It can be anything. That crushing of that little flower that's in us, that emotional, delicate part of us when we're children, that can really leave an impact on how we see ourselves. Remember what I was talking about before, that when I was working on myself, learning how to think differently, speak differently, and imagine differently, that when we're little children, we're learning how to think, speak, and imagine at that time. And so that part of us that has had those things, that crushing feeling, can often still be in there. Like we talk about having an inner child, and if you've done healing yourself, inner child work is one of the things that people do get a lot out of, because basically healing those hurts, those pains, those sadness, that fear, that guilt, that all that stuff that we picked up along the way. And I was talking to my son this morning. He has had a very, very, very tough journey, and he's just finished a course today, and he's very proud of him. But we were talking about how everybody is like a glass of water, and you can imagine that some of us, there's been dirt that's fallen into our cup. Now, when that glass is sitting there nice and still, the dirt all sinks to the bottom, and the water at the top, you could still kind of sip out of the top. Like if you were really thirsty, you drink that water, you just try not to let the mud at the bottom get up. But we're all like those glasses of water. Now, when we do work on ourselves, when we do healing on ourselves to restore our state to happiness and calm instead of anxious and depressed and all that sort of stuff, we're basically filtering that mud or that crap out of the water, remembering that I was like a crap magnet, and all the crap just kept coming into my life. I would have been like a glass of muddy water. Now, what happens to that water is when it's sitting, the sediment sinks to the bottom, but when life shakes it, it becomes like muddy. And then when it's muddy like that, you just you wouldn't want to take a sip out of that water. And people, everybody you deal with in life is like that glass of water. And if they're shaken up, they're going to splash you with their shitty, muddy, gunky water. And so it's good to remember that when we're dealing with other people, it's not about us. For them to splash their crap on us, there has to be crap in them to splash on us, or it wouldn't be coming from them to us. And similarly to us, if we want to stop feeling like crap, we need to like sift through and purify that part of us, like clean up the stuff that's within us and get ourselves into a state where we feel good, where we feel like cleansed and whole, and we're not, you know, pushing parts of our own self away, rejecting parts of ourself. We're not, you know, experiencing emotions that we can't deal with, like that overwhelm, that fear, that worry, that anxiety, that panic, that helplessness, guilt, like that paranoia, like the self-talk that's negative and belittling and terrible. So that's like, I've been in every possible like feeling state, you know, whatever, you know, relationship wise, financially. I remember, oh God, I should just make this into a series. I remember I had a lady I was working with, and she said to me once, in relationships, I've been every party. And I was like, what are you talking about? And she said, well, I've been cheated on, and I have cheated on somebody else, and I've also been the person that someone else cheated with. And I remember thinking, and this is now a very close friend of mine, and I remember thinking, does this woman have no scruples? Does she have no principles? Like, and I really judged her. I thought, like, you know, how can you live your life? How can you do that to someone else? How could you be that person? How could, like, and in me was judgment, because I was, you know, I rejected any part of me that would do any of those things. You know, for me, I thought that I was way above that. And, you know, like they say, judge not lest ye be judged, or however they say. So being only like, that would have been, gosh, maybe like 18 years ago now. And I can say that in the coming decade or so after that, I'm guessing the timelines here, but roughly the 10 years following that conversation, I got 10 years past that conversation and went, you know what, that's now true for me as well. So it's not that bad people do bad things, it's that all people are capable of doing anything, and that we need to kind of keep looking at what mud's fallen in my cup instead of looking at what everyone else has got in there. Oh, look how muddy her glass is. Look how muddy her glass is. Oh, I'd never be like that. Look how, you know, and we keep our yuckiness down. There's no, we're all on this journey together, helping each other, lifting each other up. And there is so much happiness, freedom, and joy when you get to do that deep work, and you get to find that freedom from every bit of crap that you've had to wade through to get to wherever you are now. And if you're in that swamp at the moment, like way out in that swamp where it's not even like you're holding a glass of water anymore, it's like you're actually in the muddy swamp, and you don't even know how you got there or how to get back out, and there's just feels like there's no hope, that's where, like, reach out, private message, whatever. I totally get all of that. I've been in the swamp, I've been in the darkness, the fog, the whole thing where you just don't even know where to turn to. So that's me for today. I didn't know where that was all going to go, but that's where we've ended up. If you can relate to any of this, post me a comment. Look, I just want to be as open as I can about my experiences, so that you can see and hear and feel that there is hope for everybody. Everybody can make a complete turnaround in their life. Anybody can wake up tomorrow and choose something different. And moving in the right direction is just one step in front of the other, over and over again. It's anything you repeat will take you into a direction. All right. I love that you've been able to connect with me today, and I wish you a really happy weekend. If you're watching on YouTube, give me a like and a subscribe. Your likes really matter. The algorithms in all the platforms, they really matter. You know, those people that troll and stick a thumbs down on everybody's videos, it really hurts us. So if you can like and subscribe, and that will help a lot. Thank you. Bye-bye.